The scripture reading this morning is taken from Psalm 118, which is called a song of victory. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever. Let Israel say, his steadfast love endures forever. Let the house of Aaron say, his steadfast love endures forever. Let those who fear the Lord say, his steadfast love endures forever. Out of my distress I called on the Lord. The Lord answered me and set me in a broad place. With the Lord on my side, I do not fear. What can mortals do to me? The Lord is on my side to help me. I shall look in triumph on those who hate me. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to put confidence in mortals. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. The Lord is my strength and my might. He has become my salvation. There are glad songs of victory in the tents of the righteous. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. The right hand of the Lord is exalted. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of the Lord. The Lord has punished me severely, but he did not give me over to death. Open to me the gates of righteousness, that I might enter through them and give thanks to the Lord. This is the gate of the Lord, the righteous shall enter through it. I thank you that you have answered me and have become my salvation. The stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Thanks be to God.
Well, I'd like to all of us give a warm welcome to my father. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
You turned on?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I think we're all in for a treat. Let's just take a minute and pray. Loving God, Father of us all, be with us in this time as we share and reflect on what it is to be a helper and a person who cares for others in this world. Open our hearts and our ears and our minds. Amen. So, Dad, well, some of you may have been here, and the recording is online. My very first sermon that I shared, 6 years ago now? I shared here as well, which I featured my father. And if you remember, he was indisposed in the sermon. And so when I got ordained, they got me this. It says, be careful or you will end up in my sermon. And I think this probably will not be the last time that you end up in a sermon of mine. So now's your chance to get the microphone. So welcome. Maybe we could start. Today we're exploring this theme of helpers and of service. I remember a friend was talking to us the other day and said, your family really is about being of service. Do you want to just share a little bit about what you did before you retired?
Well, before, of course, I was a member of the Calgary Police Service for 40 years. I worked a number of various areas, and a couple that would apply specifically. I was involved in our peer support team since its inception. And through that, the responsibility we had was looking after the well-being of our members and their families. That would come from any traumatic incidents that police officers would find themselves in, whether it's shooting, multiple fatalities, being involved in shootings, being shot at, being in financial crisis, also in family crisis, whether it be from finance or breakup. So it was a role that was important to me as it was to the members of the police service.
40 years being of service. When I was born, what department did you work in? You've been in a few.
1983. Okay, help out. I have to look over to my co-pilot here. Oh, okay. I got a hint from this one. In that time, I was working in the child abuse unit, where we investigated both sexual and physical assaults on children. In the 2 years I was in there, I investigated over 300 complaints. Probably 90% of them were sexual complaints. It was a tough area to work. I didn't want to leave, but I knew I had to leave, because what happened is one of the few areas where you actually saw that you made a difference. When you relieved the pressure from what a child was going through, albeit at the hands of a father, a relative, or a stranger, to see them start to blossom over time, it was tremendous. Some of the interviews, and I won't go into specifics, obviously, one that I found was particularly tough was I laid under a kitchen table and interviewed a young child probably for 2 hours. The worst part is I had a hell of a time getting up. But through that, being able to connect, we were able to get the disclosure and run a successful prosecution through the courts. But it was a job that was tough, but albeit rewarding.
You worked in many departments, but working in the service, this didn't come out of nowhere. And you have a unique tie with this space in particular. Can you show the first slide, Rowan? So I don't know if you all recognize those doors. Can you tell us what's going on here?
Well, this is the funeral for the fire chief at the time, Cappy Smart. My grandfather, Keith's great-grandfather, was one of the pallbearers at that funeral. Of course, my grandfather, as my father, both were firefighters in the city of Calgary, along with several uncles and cousins. So someone had to break the mold, and I stepped up.
Let's go to the next photo here. Oh wait, one more? Or maybe have those out of order. We'll come back to that one. So, is that your grandfather there?
The one in the Air Force uniform is my dad. He'd actually quit school to sign up for World War II. He served with the Royal Canadian Air Force. And that's my grandfather. They're both Georges, by the way. I got called George once, and actually more than once, several times, many times that I visited a fire hall, which wasn't uncommon. You get dragged along, and I was always recognized as Little George. I think there's a family resemblance there somehow, I don't know.
Well, let's go back to that one photo with the fish, because I want to ask you about that. So, one of the things you don't know about my father is he's an amazing cook. And that was one of the ways you always showed love. Always having a sandwich or a meal. And where did you get that from?
Well, of course, my dad being a firefighter was not uncommon. They cooked in the halls. And I have more recollections of my father cooking at home than I do of my mother. So I think it kind of is in the genes, as it were. And if you ever have an opportunity, this guy is a fantastic cook, especially anything Asian. He's whipped up some pretty special stuff.
Well, I guess I come by it naturally. And so you have some good memories. You had a good relationship with your dad, fishing, hunting.
Yeah.
I heard a story that Mom, when you came over for dinner, he had cooked a goose and there was buckshot in it.
I'm sure that was one of the ones that my dad shot.
Now, we don't always have good memories, and though you had a lot, and I think it's important, some of us have this is a difficult day for a lot of us. Can you talk a little bit about your last memory with your dad?
Well, it was a difficult time. My mom and dad had divorced, and then at some point my mom had passed away. My dad remarried, and that was not a good relationship. For a long period of time, we were cut out of the family. Virtually had no contact, even though I would attempt contact. It was stifled. We happened to be up at the hospital visiting my father-in-law, who had taken ill and was in the hospital, and ran into Dad's second wife. She was coming off the elevator, so figured something was up. And as it turned out, on the ward where my father-in-law was, if you're familiar with many hospitals, you have your two aisles, and in the middle is the little kitchen area. Well, if you look through the kitchen area, my dad was on the other side. So I did have an opportunity to visit him. It wasn't easy, but I think it was appreciated. And later on, when he got sick, my dad, of course, having been a firefighter, was exposed to a lot of things. He also smoked, so he had COPD, I think, as well as emphysema, and I think through that eventually his heart took him. So one other time we were at hospital visiting again, and again saw the ex coming off the elevator, and so I went and found out my dad was actually in intensive care. So I did go and visit him. He was wired up 9 ways to Sunday, and I knew he wasn't going to be long, but I was fortunate enough to have had that visit and that time together.
Thanks for sharing that with us. I want to talk about a happy memory with your dad.
Wow.
You were sharing what got you into the service, and a memory you had going around on the fire truck when you were little.
Well, one of the things, I think many may be familiar with the firefighters, and they do the toy challenge, where the Firefighters Association now takes over and delivers toys to those children in need throughout the city. In the early days, the firefighters actually fixed and repaired toys. Yes, they had some donations, but a lot was prepared by the firefighters. And I had an opportunity to go along one Christmas, and there's more, but this is the one that stands out, to do some deliveries. Actually, what they borrowed were old milk trucks. So there was a crew of firemen, and we were doing deliveries in the Ramsey community in the northeast there. And the recollection of going into this house, and I was absolutely floored, and I mean floored. It was dirt floors. There was no flooring of any type. I don't know whether it had been taken up and used for firewood or what. One of the firefighters then had a look in the cupboards and in the fridge, and there was nothing. We left. I don't know where we went. It was obviously someplace they could get groceries. I don't recall. Those firefighters pooled their money. They bought what they could and took it back to the house and made it a Christmas. So that's one that sticks and has always stuck.
So you got into this service feeling connected with this, the importance of giving and caring for others who had less. And you did something kind of interesting when you were first joined the police, part of our Scottish heritage. One more. You were in the police marching band.
Yeah, I was in the Calgary Police Pipe Band for 7 years. I think this photo was actually taken from a parade. We used to do a lot of the small communities down in the town of High River when they had their Little Britches Rodeo. They have a parade there, and that's taken from that parade. It was an opportunity. In the early years of the band, we made it a focus where families could attend. So anytime we'd go and do these small communities, a lot of us families would go and we'd camp out overnight and that. So it was good to be able to include, although there were some that weren't always keen on that, but I think for many of us, we enjoyed that time because, as you know, being a firefighter, police officer, whatever, you're taken away from your family at a lot of appointment events, birthdays, Christmas, you name it.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit about that, what it was like raising me, but I just want to say, this is maybe where you and I come naturally. Having bare knees is part of our ancestry, so. For those of you who give me trouble for not wearing pants on Sunday mornings.
Well, we should say long pants.
So, we didn't talk about this when we were planning, but I wanted to ask you. So I remember when I came out to Mom, and she said she was going to tell you. What went through your head when she told you all those years ago?
Well, and I think in a lot of ways, as you know, I think Mom knew, and I suspected. But nonetheless, it was a little difficult. It was a little trying. But you know, there wasn't a second we changed. We never stopped loving Keith for who he is and what he is. It's never changed, never will.
I remember one of the things you told me, when you were a police officer, you never knew what situation you were walking into. And what was something you would say to your guys about when you meet people of different backgrounds or sexualities or genders?
The thing is it's all hinges around respect, and that's how everyone wants to be treated. So it doesn't matter what color they are, what ethnicity, what background, what religious background, what financial background. Treat them with respect. I know many will watch a lot of the Americanized television shows about cop shows, and you see these interrogations where they're yelling and screaming and all of that kind of stuff and pounding on tables. That doesn't really work. There are times that you might impose it if you're dealing with a certain type of a criminal, ones that are seasoned, but I think the majority of times by sitting down and just having a conversation, an open conversation, those admissions came. I mean, that was particularly evident in the child abuse cases.
You did a lot of work in building good relationships with the people you worked with, and you talked a bit about being in peer support, and you were involved with the psychology team, officers when they would have incidents. You were part of
the
critical
incidents,
yeah.
And there was many of us were trained in critical incident stress debriefings and stress management. Through that, I'd done several debriefings here. One that I can touch on. It was a debriefing where many might recall there was one of our TAC team officers that was killed in a training exercise. So I was part of the team that were going to do the debriefing with all of the spouses from the members of the TAC team or SWAT team, whichever you might know it as. And as we're going in the door, the staff psychologist turned and looked to me and says, "Okay, I want you to run this one." Well, it almost sounded like thunder when something went, "Oh, okay." But the thing is, you take that breath and you rely on your training.
That's beautifully said. And after international crisis, you went down with a team. Tell a little bit about that.
That photo's taken at Ground Zero. I'm actually standing on the roof of Fire Hall number 10. Every firefighter in that hall was killed that day. New York was tough for all of us, and we were down there doing debriefings, which I'll talk a little bit about. But again, it was really compounded by the fact that my family background were firefighters. And when you walked into that hall, of course, on the main floor where they parked the apparatus, the rig, the truck, okay, the truck was gone, of course. Then you go up to the second floor, which was the living quarters. Everything had been left exactly the way it was the day of the event. Newspapers were out, including in the reading room, where the white throne is. Dishes on the table and in the sinks and stuff. That had just been left. So that really struck home. And we were down there for a week, which doesn't sound like very long, and I still look back on it wasn't, but what had happened, the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation had put out a call worldwide for trained police officers to come and conduct these debriefings with the NYTB PD members. And we go into these debriefings not as a team. We often joined up with other teams, so it wasn't our team of 4, which was 3 police officers and a forensic psychologist, never worked together as a team. We all split up and all joined other teams. But it didn't matter. We were all trained the same way, so it really worked. We were getting ready for one debriefing, and there's this gentleman. He was having a lot of difficulty, and when he learned that we'd come from Calgary, so he had no conception of Calgary and where it was. So there'd been a PIM map created to show where those that had come to assist in the briefings had come from. We took him out and showed him where Calgary was in relation to New York. And he started to cry. He said, "You came all the way just to see me?" We made a difference.
Thanks.
But I got home, and inside a week I had shingles. I think there was a little stress involved.
Yeah. Vicarious trauma is a thing. And years later, I'll go to the next slide, just touch on this briefly. At the War Museum over on the Curry Barracks, a piece of girder was unveiled, and you part of inaugurating it.
This was actually on the 10-year anniversary after the fall, after 9/11. We'd been donated a piece of one of the girders from the World Trade Center, and it's now installed in an installation outside the entrance of the museum there on Crowchild Trail. So it was part of the dedication service. I had an opportunity to speak then about my experiences and our team's experience in New York. So it was quite an honor.
Well, you've been an inspiration to me to be a helper, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And so coming back full circle to your experience all those years when you were little, I don't know if you can see inside the helicopter, there's Mr. and Mrs. Claus. So when did you start doing Santa Claus?
Well, I think it was, I don't know, around 1996, somewhere around there. Many of the district offices or units would host and hold Christmas parties for their kids. And the reason, and they do a citywide one now, but it was often because of different shifts and people coming and going. That's why there were many different ones. And the one in the district I was in, they were all set to have it. Everything was in place. I had no role in it at that time, other than our own kids would likely be going. Their Santa phone, 2 days notice, couldn't do it. So the constable that was doing the arranging was in an absolute flap. So what are we going to do? I said, I'll do it. Never thought that from then till now, this Santa's had over 10,000 kids on his lap. I wonder I walk with a limp some days.
Let's go to the next photo. So, thanks for sharing a bit of your story with us. There are many ways that we can choose to be helpers in this world.
Absolutely.
For those of us here in this day, we see a lot of difficulty in this world. I want to ask you one more thing. When it's been difficulty in your world, what do you lean on?
Well, first of all, I lean on someone over here in the corner who happens to be babysitting, and my own family. That's always been important. But there's also our faith in what we believe and who we rely on. I think many of us all talk to God, but sometimes we don't really listen. And sometimes that silence is good because then it helps us to process. And I think that's an important part. This is Father's Day, but there is one Father. And we have to rely on Him.
Well said. Thank you, Dad.
You're welcome.
Why don't we just sit in that? Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you.
Neil, round of applause. Thank you, Dad.
Sit. Love you.
So, in the spirit of gentleness, why don't we sing together? You can just stay
Oh,
seated.
no, hang on, I shut the mic.
Yeah, we'll shut the mic off. Join us and sing.